"76-year-old Sybil Brumley was a well-liked member of her community in the Mansfield, Louisiana area. Sybil was a gentle and kind-hearted soul who maintained a close relationship with her family. Her husband had died in 1975 and she lived alone ever since, dating a few men but never really settling down with anyone else. She enjoyed making arts and crafts and was not the type of person you would expect to run into trouble. Unfortunately, you should always expect the unexpected. On April 29th of 1997, the DeSoto Sheriff's Office noticed that Sybil wasn't showing up for work. She was a part-time secretary at the office, and she was always a reliable person, but for some reason, she never showed up to her shift. Some of her colleagues and family members decided to check in at Sybil's home, but what they found was incredibly chilling. Sybil's front door had been kicked in, the screen door had been cut, and the inside of the house was a complete mess. Sybil's potted plants were strewn across the floor, and her furniture had been moved haphazardly. Inside Sybil's bedroom, her shoes were scattered around at random, suggesting that someone may have rummaged through her clothing. Her purse and several articles of clothing were missing, but worst of all, Sybil herself was nowhere to be seen. The investigators were sure Sybil had been forcefully abducted, but the trail very quickly became cold. Despite the probability that Sybil most likely knew her kidnapper, no suspects were ever publicly named. Hardly any information is known about this case, and Sybil's house was paved over to make Highway 171. Her case will almost certainly remain unsolved forever, and her abductor will most likely never face justice. Most people have at least heard the names Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer. Countless documentaries, books, and other pieces of media have been made about these serial killers, but have you ever heard of the serial killer known only as the Doodler? The Doodler was responsible for somewhere in the range of 6 to 16 murders between January of 1974 and September of 1975, as well as 3 assaults. He operated in San Francisco and got his name due to his habit of sketching his victims before killing them. On January 27th of 1974, the body of 49-year-old Gerald Earl Kavanaugh was discovered on Ocean Beach in San Francisco. The Canadian-American immigrant had been stabbed multiple times, and his body was fully clothed and lying face up. He had several defensive wounds, suggesting he had attempted to resist his killer. On June 25th of that same year, a woman who was walking along Spreckles Lake discovered the body of 27-year-old Joseph Stevens. Joseph was a comedian, and he had been seen at a club the previous day. He had died in a very similar manner to Gerald Kavanaugh. On July 7th, a woman who was walking her dog along Ocean Beach discovered the body of 31-year-old Klaus Achim Christmann, a German-American immigrant. Klaus had been stabbed more times than either of the previous 2 victims, including several slashes to the throat. His body was also fully clothed. Unlike the previous 2 victims, Klaus was married and had children. At this point, after 3 bodies had been discovered, the police had reason to suspect a serial killer. The victims had all met their demise in a very similar fashion, and the killer clearly had a modus operandi. His victims were all white men whom he had most likely met at gay nightclubs, bars, or restaurants. Even though Klaus was married and had children, the police suspected he was actually gay or bisexual and had not come out yet. The Doodler wasn't done with his rampage just yet. On April 27th of 1975, 52-year-old Warren Andrews was found in a San Francisco park called Land's End. Warren had been a lawyer for the United States Postal Service. At the time he was found, he was actually still alive but unconscious. Tragically, he never regained consciousness and died 7 weeks later. He had been beaten with a rock and a tree branch. On May 12th of the same year, the body of 32-year-old Frederick Elmer Capon was discovered. Like most of the other victims, he had been repeatedly stabbed, and the police suspected that his body had been moved roughly 20 feet after the murder. Frederick had served in the Vietnam War with the United States Navy and had become a nurse after leaving the military. On June 4th, the decomposed body of 66-year-old Harold Goldberg was found in Lincoln Park. Harold was a Swedish-American immigrant. Harold's murder was slightly different from the doodler's other atrocities. While his other victims were still clothed, Harold's underwear had been stolen and his pants were unzipped. During the investigation, the police identified a likely suspect. He cooperated with the authorities during his interview, but never actually confessed to any of the crimes he was being accused of. The investigators believed they could secure a conviction for the suspect because 3 men had survived encounters with the doodler. However, these men refused to appear in court because they were afraid of disclosing their sexual orientation publicly. While this decision has been criticized by some, an activist named Harvey Milk stated that the victims were likely scared of receiving backlash from friends and family as a result of their sexuality. The name of the suspect has never been made public, and despite the police strongly suspecting his guilt, he was never charged with the murders. Relisha Rudd was an 8-year-old girl who lived with her mother in the D.C. General Shelter in 2014. Relisha's mother, Shamika, met a 51-year-old janitor who worked in the hospital named Khalil Tatum. Tatum had a criminal record that included burglary, larceny, and breaking and entering. While working in the homeless shelter, Tatum was known for fraternizing with the residents and showing special interest in young girls. After becoming friends with Shamika, he bought a tablet for Relisha and took her to see Disney on Ice. These seemingly innocent acts of kindness were just Tatum's method of gaining Shamika's trust. Shamika eventually let Tatum take Relisha to stay with him and his grandmother overnight. In February of that year, Relisha abruptly stopped going to school. Shamika sent a note to the school telling them that her daughter was experiencing health issues and she was in the care of someone named Dr. Tatum. The school called the phone number Shamika had provided, but the alleged Dr. Tatum never showed up for a meeting with the school. A counselor contacted the police to report Relisha missing. The police launched a missing persons probe. The investigators reviewed security camera footage and found that Tatum and Relisha had been caught on camera walking down a hallway in a Holiday Inn Express in northeast Washington, D.C. At a later date, the pair had been caught on camera walking to a room in a Days Inn on New York Avenue in Washington, D.C. In a chilling turn of events, Tatum's wife, Andrea, was found dead in a hotel room in Prince George's County, Georgia, on the same day that Relisha went missing. She had been shot in the head. Security camera footage showed Tatum and Andrea entering the hotel room the previous night. The investigators also turned up another stomach-churning clue in the case. The day after Relisha was last seen, Tatum was seen purchasing a shovel, a lime, and 42-gallon trash bags. The police obtained an arrest warrant for Tatum, but he had beaten them to it. Khalil Tatum had used the same gun he had killed his wife with to commit suicide. In Relisha's case, every theory is incredibly disturbing. One theory suggests that Tatum may have been pimping Relisha out to others. Another theory suggests that Tatum himself was sexually abusing her. Either way, it's truly sickening to think about what that poor girl must have gone through in her final days, and it's very frustrating that Tatum chose the coward's way out rather than facing justice for his atrocities. While searching Reddit for unsolved cases to cover, I came across a post about a John Doe from Poland. The Olsztyn John Doe was found in early July of 1999 in Lake Ukiel, which is a popular tourist destination in Olsztyn, Poland. He was between 16 and 18 years old and had died from drowning. This particular lake is apparently known for having unguarded beaches, which would explain why nobody saved the man. According to the post, John Doe had a very recognizable face and facial structure, but he mysteriously remains unidentified to this day despite this. John Doe also received very little media attention and hardly any information about his case is known. The person who posted this on Reddit stated that they found a possible match for John Doe. Maciej Józwiak bears a strong resemblance to John Doe and went missing in the same general area as John Doe. However, Joswiak was reported missing in October of 1999, so the timeline doesn't really add up. The person who posted this said they contacted the Ataka Foundation, which is responsible for John Doe's case, and they told him it wasn't Joswiak. The Redditor mentioned that he would try searching international missing persons databases to find a match. After all, the lake is a popular tourist destination, so it is possible that John Doe had come from abroad. He also provided a translation of John Doe's description. His height was 175 centimeters. He had a medium build, dark blonde hair that was short and straight, a round face, pale complexion, high forehead. His eyes were wide apart and convex. His nose was small, straight, and concave. He had medium-sized ears, a medium-sized mouth, a full set of teeth, a protruding chin, a short neck, long arms and fingers, and long and skinny legs. This is an amateur facial reconstruction of John Doe that the Redditor created themselves. You can also find the picture of his body online, although I don't recommend it. Hopefully this Redditor will find something to crack open this case soon, and we can get some answers about this John Doe.